In today's class, we'll be taking a look at how to structure your purpose of the study, your research questions, and your hypothesis. I'll be using three different types of study. Firstly, survey. Second, correlation. And thirdly, experimental study. The first one will be an undergraduate topic, while the second one suits is okay for master's work, while the third one is okay for PhD research thesis. In an undergraduate study, for instance, you frame a topic like teachers' perception on the influence of Edumodul instructional technology, that is EIT, on senior secondary school student performance in economics. Now, in bracket, a case study of Alimosho local government area, Lagos State. Your area of the study is Alimosho local government area. As I said in my earlier videos, that you have to have your what? Dependent and independent variables. You have what here? Edumodu instructional technology as your what? Independent variable, while performance is your what? Dependent variable, because student performance depends on Edumodu instructional technology. This is a good topic. Now, how do you frame purpose of the study for this type of survey work? Now, it's a purpose of the study. First thing you do is to, in this your purpose of the study, first state the main purpose of the study, then state the specific purposes. The main purpose now, the aim of this study is to ascertain the influence of Edumodu instructional technology, that is EIT, on student performance in economics. Now, you can now say specifically the study seeks to, now if you look at it, I say specifically the study seeks to, the six I'm using is that I'm using S, WEKS there to show that you have not done your proposal yet. You are still within your chapter 1 to 3. After you return from your field work, then you have to change that six to short, to past tense. You have to change all your present tense to past tense. Now, specifically, the study seeks to determine teachers' perception on the influence of EIT on student performance in economics. Secondly, determine teachers' perception on the influence of EIT on students' performance in economics based on teachers' gender. That one is now considering the gender of the teachers. The first one will only be listing all your questionnaire items. That is the first purpose there. While the second purpose will be based on teachers' gender, that is male and female teachers. While the third one says that determine teachers' perception on the influence of EIT on student performance in economics based on teachers' years of experience. This one now is based on teachers' years of experience, maybe 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15 years, and 16 years and above. So that is how you structure your purpose. Then let's see the research question how it's going to be. Now, for our research questions now, firstly we say before that, before stating all these your research questions that we have here, the first thing you have to say is that the following research questions will guide the study. Then you can now start stating them. One, what is teachers' perception on the influence of EIT on student performance in economics? Two, what is teacher perception on the influence of EIT on student performance in economics based on teachers' gender? Just as you have it in your purpose, the only thing here now is that we have changed that to determine to what is and what is, making theory we still have the same theory. Then the full stop that ends it, we have now changed it to what? Question mark. Now, secondly, what is teacher perception on the influence of EIT? That is the one based on gender, while the third one will be based on years of experience. How do you structure this? What is teachers' perception on the influence of EIT on student performance in economics based on teachers' years of experience? Now, you can now move to hypothesis. How do you structure your hypothesis? HO1. Please, this one here should be subscript 1. But because this thing is slide, it's not giving me the subscript sign. That is why I could not make it subscript. I just put ordinary one there, but it should be subscript 1. HO1 says that now before you state the hypothesis, the first thing is that the following hypothesis will guide the study at 0.05 significant level. Now HO1, there is no significant difference in the main response ratings of teachers' perception on the influence of EIT on student performance in economics based on teachers' gender. It's just so that there is no significant difference in the mean response rating. That means that in this study, we want to use mean and standard deviation to answer our what? Research questions. So while in our hypothesis, we will still have the mean and standard deviation, but this will be t-test simply because we have gender, which is having two categories, which is male and female. So we have category male and category female. So these two categories will now make us to use two words t-test, but when we get to method of data analysis, we will be explaining better. While the second one, HO2, there is no significant difference in the main response ratings of teachers' perception on the influence of EIT on student performance in economics based on teachers' years of experience. This one is based on teachers' years of experience, which you say can be 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15 years, and 16 and above in 4 categories. So you can use ANOVA for this. But when we get to chapter 3, we'll be discussing more on that. Now, we move to, let's see, this one is good. This topic is good for master's thesis. Let's see how this is. We say entrepreneurship education as a correlate of graduate employability in Ashanti region, Ghana. The study area here is Ashanti region in Ghana. Please don't say Ashanti state. Ghana is not using state. They use region. They don't use province. Please be careful. Now, entrepreneurship education as a correlate of graduate. As I've told you, you have to have your dependent and independent variable. What is your dependent variable here? What is your independent? Your independent variable is what? Entrepreneurship education, which employability level is depending on it. Employability is your dependent. Why? Entrepreneurship education is independent variable because employability level depends on that what entrepreneurship education the student have undergone. Now, this is a correlation study. Purpose of the study. How do we? You still state the main purpose and the specific purposes. The first thing is the main purpose. The study aims at investigating entrepreneurship education as a correlate of graduate employability. Specifically, the study sought to, now I'm using it in form of past tense, that you have already done your chapter 1 to 3 successfully. Then you are writing your 4 and 5. You have to go and change all your present tense back to what? Past tense. Now, 1. Determine the relationship between entrepreneurship education and graduate employability. This one now, because it's a correlation study, is what? Is dealing with relationship. It's not checking the relationship between entrepreneurship education and graduate employability. 2. Determine the relationship between entrepreneurship education and graduate employability as moderated by what? Gender. While the third one says determine the relationship between entrepreneurship education and graduate employability what? As moderated by location. As moderated, you just say as moderated. Now, as moderated by what? Location. That is that. So now what we use? This is regression analysis. You use regression to run this. But when we get to chapter 3, we'll be discussing about that. Now, the research question of this. How do you frame this research question? Still based on what? Your purpose, but this have to be in question from which to start with what is and have to end with question mark. 1. What is the relationship between entrepreneurship education and graduate employability? 2. What is the relationship between entrepreneurship education and graduate employability as moderated by gender? And thirdly, what is the relationship between entrepreneurship education and graduate employability as moderated by location? You can see that you still have it like your purpose, this, but now what is not more to determine or the relationship to determine or to ascertain? No, this is what is, then you have to end with what? Question mark. Now, hypothesis. Still from your question, research questions. Hypothesis now. The following hypothesis will guided the study. The following hypothesis guided the study and were tested at 0.05 significant level. HO1, don't forget the one should be subscript, the 2 subscript, the 3 subscript. HO1 HO1 say there is no significant relationship between entrepreneurship education and graduate employability. There is no significant relationship between both. It's your result that will now determine if you should accept this hypothesis or you should reject the hypothesis. 2. There is no significant relationship between entrepreneurship education and graduate employability as moderated by gender. Your result will also determine either to accept or reject the statement. Thirdly, HO3, there is no significant relationship between entrepreneurship education and graduate employability as moderated by location. Your result will also determine if you are to accept this statement or to reject the statement. Now, we now move to a PhD. Let's look at this PhD topic. This is good for PhD research work. Now, effect of Kahoot educational technological game and game of set on high school students' achievement and interest in mathematics in Quebec province, Canada. In Quebec province, Canada. Effect of Kahoot, you will see that this is having two independent variable and two dependent variable. What are the two dependent variables this study is having? Achievement and interest. And the two independent variable that this study is having are Kahoot educational technological game and what? Game of set. Remember that I said it in my first class that any two instructional materials or technology, anything you want to compare together, technological instruction or anything you want to compare together must have some similarities and differences. If there's no similarities and differences, then you cannot compare them together. As you can see here, Kahoot educational technological game is an online based game, while game of set is a manual game. Now you want to compare both when teaching mathematics, when teaching high school students mathematics. Now, purpose of the study. You first state the main aim of this study. The main aim of the study is to ascertain the effect of KETG, that is the Kahoot educational technological game, and GS, which is game of set, on high school student achievement and interest in mathematics in Quebec province, Canada. Specifically, the study seeks to one, you will see that this is an experimental study. You don't frame its purposes, research question and hypothesis like the way you have framed the survey on or the correlation study on. This is an experimental study. This is how you frame the. Now, one, to compare, that is, compare the differences in the mean achievement scores of students taught mathematics. Those are the students that were taught mathematics using Kahoot educational technological game and those taught with game of set. You are comparing the mean achievement score of both. Secondly, compare the differences in the mean interest scores of students taught mathematics using the Kahoot educational technological game and those taught with the GS. Thirdly, now you want to compare the differences in the mean achievement scores of male and female students taught mathematics. This place there used to be very big issue here. You will see some students after writing taught mathematics, some PhD students will still say using this using Kahoot educational technological game and those taught with. No, you don't need to put it, just ignore that. Just leave it like this. Compare the differences in the mean achievement scores of male and female students taught mathematics. If you put that, for instance, if you want to have interaction effect simply because you have gender and you want to have interaction effect for this kind of thing, you will now discover that your interaction effect when you are running the analysis will be of the same thing with your research question 3 and 4. Your interaction effect of on achievement and on achievement and interest based on gender will not be almost the same thing. So I used to advise students to neglect including that. Just stop at this mathematics. Then the last one too will now be compare the differences in the mean interest scores of male and female student taught mathematics. Then you can now still have interaction effect to determine the interaction effect of instructional technology and what? Gender on student achievement in mathematics. That is interaction effect if you want to include it 5 and 6. But in this kind of study it is good to include the interaction effect to make it 6 research questions, 6 hypotheses and 6 purposes. Now how do you structure these research questions? To structure the research question, now as you can see, we have already stated the purpose. Now we come to the research questions. Research questions for this. Now it will be in question form. What are the differences in the mean achievement scores of students taught mathematics using the Kahoot educational technological game and those taught with game of set? The second one is still based on the same way but in question form. What are, then it will end with question mark. The third one too will be just like your research question, like your purpose, but it will be in form of question here. What are the differences in the mean achievement scores of male and female students taught mathematics? While the fourth one too will be also be in question form. Now we move to hypothesis. Now looking at this your hypothesis. Hypothesis 1, there is no significant difference in the mean achievement scores of students taught mathematics using KETG and those taught with GS. That means there is no significant difference between both of them. Your result will now determine is there significant difference or not. If there is, then you have to say okay there is significant, and if there is not, then the second one too says there is no significant difference in the main interest scores of students taught mathematics using the Kahoot educational technological game and those taught with GS. The third one, there is no significant difference in the main achievement scores of male and female students taught mathematics. Thank you. Here now, there is no significant difference. It's not considering either using what Kahoot educational technological game or game of set. You are less concerned here. Both the students that were taught Kahoot, you are only interested in the agenda. So both that were taught the Kahoot educational technological game and those that were taught with game of set, the male in both will now serve as your male, while the female in both will now serve as your what? Female. Unlike the first one whereby you are just comparing the male taught with dat Kahoot educational technological game, the male and female stand for Kahoot educational technological game, while male and female for dat one also stand for game of set. But here is not like dat. You now match both male together and both female together because it's gender you are looking at. So in the fourth one also too, you also check it like dat but based on interest. Now you have to design instrument. The instrument you have to design for dis type of study, you have to design your achievement test and your interest inventory. When we get to instrument in chapter 3, I will be explaining in details how to design instrument for this type of study. Thank you. I'll be happy you have I'll be happy to see you in my next class. Thank you.